I want to talk to you today about information graphics. Let's start with a definition. An information graphic, or infographic, provides a visual representation of information, data, and/or knowledge. So what makes a good one? Well, that's what we're going to explore over the next 6 minutes. Okay, so who the hell is Dmitry Mendeleev? Dmitry Ivanovich Mendeleev was a Russian chemist and inventor. In the 1860s, Mendeleev began working on a classification system, the elements. It relied on the notion that elements displayed periodicity, a repetition of similar properties according to their atomic structure.
Now do you recognize his work? Mendeleev's periodic table of the elements, one of the coolest information graphics ever designed. By ordering the elements according to their atomic weight and then structuring them according to their valencies, you create a table that allows chemists to predict the behavior and classify elements according to their chemical behavior. The next graphic I'd like to show you is the greatness of being. Now this is a graphic representation of Schumacher's idea that being and knowing are not one reality, but are actually levels of reality. This is a very complex concept made easier to comprehend through the use of the information graphic. Houston Smith and Brad Reynolds leveraged the greatness of being to compare how various wisdom traditions or religions treat the levels of reality and the levels of selfhood. This graphic represents the levels of reality above and the levels of selfhood below, and then concentric rings are used to allow you to compare. The French invasion of Russia in 1812 was a turning point in the Napoleonic Wars. Napoleon, at the height of his power, launches the campaign, but the march goes deeper into Russia than planned, and deeper into winter. Supply wagons are stuck in the mud, which freezes solid, breaking the wagons and killing the horses. The decision to retreat from Moscow in defeat was only the beginning of the long march home. Charles Menard's Carte Figurative is an illustration of this campaign. His map shows troop locations and movements. This ever-diminishing line reflects Napoleon's ever-reducing troop numbers. He leaves with 422,000 men, and by the time he returns from Moscow, only 10,000 men remain. This next one's one of my favorites. It's from George Proskop's United States History with syncretic charts, maps, and statistical diagrams. This particular one is the syncretic diagram. It's the United States history. This chart details 400 years of United States history up to 1911 when the book was published. Here's another graphic from Proskop's book, this one focusing on the national period. It's broken up by president and then clustered into 3 major time periods. Also, notice the geographic expansion of the United States across the bottom. Now, this graphic is a little more whimsical. This is the graphic table of contents from one of my favorite books, You Don't Have to Come Home from Work Exhausted. It's illustrated by Mike Crone. The reader takes off along the path to energy renewal and travels through various graphic representations of each of the chapters. Let's take a look inside the book. Now, I'm sure you've heard about left and right brain dominance, and this graphic is from the chapters on brain dominance and whole brain thinking. Now, notice the symbols and text on the right-hand side of the brain representing art and music. Then look at the contrasting images for planning and more rational or logical thought on the left-hand side of the brain. Finally, look at the sign of contentment on the woman's face. She's obviously at peace with her balanced brain. This collage of scenes from the chapter on superhuman syndrome, trying to be all things to all people and the stress that can convey, really nails the concept. Notice the perimeter of scenes of this woman's life. Then, notice the frantic center picture, really illustrating the level of stress that this woman is under. Dante Alighieri wrote his epic poem, The Divine Comedy, between 1308 and 1321. It follows Dante's journey through the 9 levels of hell, if I may. There were as many flames there glittering in the 8th cleft which I perceived as soon as I arrived where I could see the bottom. Having a graphic representation of the main landscape of the journey makes it easier to follow Dante's text. That's why I like this graphic. It illustrates some of the key features like the dark forest and the entrance to hell. It also divides upper and lower hell for sins of the appetite, lower hell for sins of malice, and then individually labels each of the 9 circles of hell. I love medical illustrations. Some of them are nothing short of works of art. Now, this particular illustration is a fairly typical diagram of an eyeball, but notice the use of the cutaway view. This allows us to see both the interior and the exterior of the eye. Major components are called out with labels. This particular illustration even shows various layers of the eye. This conceptualization of the warfare intelligence machine shows graphic representations of sources of raw data on the left and right sides of the graphic. That raw data comes into the center of the intelligence machine, where it's combined with other data. It's then processed and analyzed and then fed up to the consumers, your armed services, the Army, the Air Force, and the Navy. The pH scale is used to measure the acid or base of a medium, in this case a swimming pool. Now, chlorine gas or body acids can tip the scale to the acidic side. And if we interpret the graphic correctly, what we can do to compensate that is to add soda ash to the pool water. And if we get too much of a base or alkaline mixture, we can increase the chlorine again to bring it back into balance. Now, since we're already at the pool, I thought I'd show you my favorite diagram of a physical procedure, the springboard dive. If we isolate each still of the image, we can run it as an animation. Notice how smooth the procedure runs this way. That's because the illustrator included each critical nuance of motion. It's beautiful.
In contrast, this diagram of juggling clubs fails to show enough of the critical points. Let's see what happens when we try to run this as an animation. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I don't think I'll be learning to juggle clubs from this graphic. And I wonder if he does burning torches. So what are the qualities of a great information graphic? First, the graphic must represent information, data, and/or knowledge. Second, it must do so in a way that clarifies or illustrates relationships and allows for deep interpretation, even enabling the user to make predictions from the graphic. Finally, the graphic should stir the heart and engage the spirit. Thank you for your time.